Good evening, everyone. I'm your host, Dr. Dindor, here with my panel, Dr. Well-Equipped and Dr. Enos P. Chad, and today we're going to be going over the newest issue of Math Boy Monthly. Before we get into anything, I'd like to go around the room, and I think some introductions are in order. Dr. Quipped?
Thank you, Dr. Dor. Good evening, everyone. Dr. Chad, Dr. Dor. I'm Dr. Well-Equipped. I have a PhD in Math Boy Studies, and I'm working on my PhD in Junnar Studies. My research focuses on Linkus Binkus, so I'm happy to be here to review this month's issue of Math Boy Monthly.
Fantastic. Dr. Chad?
Yes, I am Dr. Enos P. Chad, PhD, THD, CBD, KMS, and Historian of the Year 2016. I have a secondary degree in Danelic-Borrellian Doctor's Relations, lead fellow at the Cramoran Institute, and majored in Math Boy Studies. And I'm glad to be here, gentlemen. Absolutely glad.
Fantastic. Glad to have you here as well. And thank you all for gathering to review this issue. And I know we were all looking forward to this issue. We have a lot of great guest authors coming in, a lot of great topics to go over. I see here at the bottom we have a little bit of a preview. Page 2, we can look forward to how apples change math. And Dr. Quipped, I know that your latest book focuses a lot on this. What do you think we can expect?
Well, I think one thing we can expect is if we're going to use my latest book as a reference, it's definitely interesting. Because my last book is a little bit of a contradictory to how apples can change math. I simply don't see their formatic equations compared to mine. I think mine are superior, but we'll know when we get there. We shall discuss that as we get there.
Absolutely. And Dr. Chad, I know you've probably been eyeing this as well as I have. The 5 Math Boy fashion musts this season. What do you think we're in for?
Well, to be honest, I don't know what we're in for. However, being that the Math Boy is a reincarnation of this, absolutely fantastic spirit, I think we can expect maybe something that represents reincarnation.
Very good. Absolutely. Very interesting, gentlemen. Then, without further ado, let's jump right into page 1 then, shall we?
Absolutely.
Inevitably.
So here we have, of course, we all knew it was coming, this month's Theory of the Month. Didn't expect it on page 1, but here we go. And they went with PEMDAS this month, which is interesting because I remember the December issue back in 1971 focused on PEMDAS. So it's definitely odd that they came back to PEMDAS so quickly. But it looks like we have a...
Dr. Dor, sorry to interrupt you. As we know, Dr. Dor, the Math Boy, every inheritor of the title, they have their choice of expanding new knowledge to us, the uncultured. So if we're looping back to PEMDAS, it means that the Math Boy has not decided that we are ready for new equations. So I understand your frustration, I would call it, but I would ask for a little bit of patience with the Math Boy, for he is who knows best.
Of course. Thank you. I bite my tongue to that, good sir. Thank you very much for correcting me. With all of that being said, let's jump right into the article. So it reads, developed by Lord Sir Edward Cromwell, Duke of Edinburgh, PEMDAS has a history rich in culture. Cromwell, an Inverness native, developed PEMDAS at the behest of Lord Lady Beatrice McCulloch, 2nd Viscountess of York. There, and then you can see a picture of Lord Sir Edward Cromwell. The Viscountess sought to undo the work of Lord Admiral Arthur Eddington, who developed the Madsept theory at the behest of King George IV. Further research proved that Cromwell's theory held truer, and thus was granted a second dukedom in Cambridge. I only laugh because we all know the inside joke. We all know very well what was going on behind closed doors when it came to the Viscountess and to the Lord Admiral.
Well, I can't say that everyone knows, but those who know, they know.
Absolutely. And it goes without saying that it doesn't come without its scandals. With that aside, though, on the right side of this page, we get into kind of the nitty-gritty of the theory. And I speak for myself when I say that I'm not too much of an expert. Of course, I mean, who is? But I'd like to point... Oh, absolutely. And I'd like to direct my attention to Dr. Chad on this one. I know you've done some work with PEMDAS. Can you go over maybe some of these equations? Kind of give us a breakdown of what's going on here. Dr. Chad?
Yes, absolutely. So, PEMDAS is the theory created by, Lord Sir Edward Garnwell. And it goes in an order of parenthesis, exponent, multiply, divide, add, subtract, and that's the order.
Okay.
So, let's say the answer is 1. As you can see in the first example, it's incorrect, because the PEMDAS was not followed. The order was not followed. However, in the second example, because the order of PEMDAS was in fact followed, we get the correct answer of 1. So in this situation, you would do the 2 plus 2 first, which always equals 4. That's basic. That's basic mathematical knowledge. You don't need a math boy to figure that one out.
Here.
And then that 4 that you have gotten, you now keep it there, and you go over to the 8 divided by 2, which is 4.
A little bit of math for us today on this evening.
Absolutely.
Oh, well, it's a benefit that it's a little late in the day. I mean, it's just going over mathematical equations all day. It can take a toll on the brain. I mean, we're not the math boy after.
Naturally.
We're sadly limited to normal physical capabilities and mental capabilities.
And I will say this is advanced stuff. It's not your run-of-the-mill equation.
Absolutely not.
It's not. It's absolutely not. And that's why we need a math boy. The world is full of things us normal people cannot solve, and that is what the math boy's purpose is.
Here.
This equation. Yep.
Absolutely. Very interesting. Thank you for your synopsis, Dr. Chad. And without further ado, we can move on to page 2. Gentlemen, we all saw this one coming. We didn't know which issue we were going to see it in, but here it is, laid out bare right in front of us. Dr. Quipped, I'm sure you knew I was going to call upon you for this one. We all read your last installment. I have a copy sitting on my desk right now.
Oh, if you want to send it my way, I can sign it for you if you want.
Absolutely. Take it away, Doctor.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Dorr. So, apples. What are they? What do they want? Intellectual property of Colonel Jean-Claude Van Damme, apples were first invented at the behest of Pope Clement VIII. Van Damme invented the apple in the late century 2 BCE. Now, if we look over to the right, you see that the apples are replacing the actual numerical values of a number to further for the equation. So, as we all know, 1 plus 1 equals 2. It always has been, and it always will, unless at the behest of the math boy.
Here.
You can change that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
So, if we go down to the third example, we have 1 apple plus 1 apple equals 7. Now, personally, for those who've read my latest book, I do not believe that for my mathematical equations would make an apple plus an apple equal 8, not 7.
Really?
I do not think that a prime number would be evenly would be an even outcome for, or would be, excuse me, sorry, brain fart.
Of course, we all have them.
So 2 apples, that's it. That's an even number, right? 2 as in the numerical value. So if we have 2 apples, which are even numbers, and it equals a prime number, I simply don't see it. It's obvious to me that 1 apple plus 1 apple would equal 8, if we're using my theory. Now, the theory that they're using here is very interesting, because if you look at the second one, you have 1 plus 1 apple is equivalent to 2. Now, whether that's true or not is up to the math boy. I do not have final say in that. I simply
Here.
my own theories on it. However, I do believe that the math boy knows better than what I would know, for they are the math boy.
Praise be to God.
And to the math book.
Very, very interesting takes, gentlemen, I must say. However, I don't know that the math boy would agree, but that is, indeed for up to him to decide. And blessed be his name. And when he watches this review, hopefully he has something to chime in on. With that being said, we can move on to page 3. Now, Dr. Enos, I am going to defer to your expertise here. We, of course, this month in Anatomy of the Math Boy, I could say for myself that I have not spent too much time in the anatomy sphere. And pardon me, did I say Dr. Enos? I meant Dr. Quipped. Dr. Quipped, we've all read the latest installment of your newest book. We all know that you've delved into the anatomy portion quite a fair bit. I think it's fair to say that you've great deal of hours. What do you make of this? How do you pronounce some of these words? Because I don't think anyone else speaks Latin in this room.
Oh, well, truth be told, Latin is one of the most original mathematical formulas. However, the math boy is the only one that has the complete set, for other parts of the equation have been lost to time other than to the math boy. They are the only ones that would know. So this is with only the knowledge that I could consume for the information presented. And as I always like to do, I like to start from the top and work my way to the bottom.
Naturally.
So, as we can see in the photo here, it has pretty much the most noticeable differences between the math boy and between a regular human. So starting at the top, we have the crankins, which averagely has a circumference of about 120 centimeters, which is stated, but we cannot say for certain, for it is only a math boy that knows the true circumference of their crankins. And the crankins, what's interesting about the crankins is the reason it's so big compared to natural humans is the amount of mathematical knowledge they need to keep in there at all times is just, it's immeasurable.
Here.
We cannot understand what is possibly going on inside the crankins.
The only one that can calculate the size of the crankins of a math boy is a math boy.
True.
Here.
Now moving down, we have the clackawag. So the clackawag it works similar to a human nose, but only slightly similar. So what the clackawaggle does is, on top of a math boy being able to take in knowledge through reading, the clackawaggle, it actually makes it easier for the math boys so that they can consume knowledge at a much higher rate than we can. The clackawaggle actually allows the math boy to inhale all the knowledge out of a book to further their understanding of a mathematical equation or formula, so that way they can make the best known one. Now, whether it's their choice to spread that knowledge is entirely up to the math boy.
Here.
Moving down from there, we have the lingy dingies. And the lingy dingies is actually it's a really interesting anatomical part of the math boy, because the lingy dingies are not naturally made. The lingy dingy has to be surgically removed and put into the new math boy. And what those are is think of it as a hard drive from a computer. It holds all knowledge in there, and the reason why it's surgically implanted is because the lingy dingies holds lost knowledge, like the complete numerical equation of the Latin lexicon.
Okay.
And
the last digit of pi.
Here.
Correct. The lingy dingies hold all that knowledge in there. it predates all the way to the first Math Boy. And that those same organs have been surgically implanted in each new Math Boy, and it's only a Math Boy that can have those organs, and I'll further delve into that once we get lower on the anatomy. Below that, we have the Jippy Napper Tapper Bat. And the Jippy Napper Tapper Bat is part of the stomach. And it just normally, like it would, it digests their food so they can continue thriving, so they can create more
naturally.
formulas.
Naturally.
And what's interesting about the Jippy Napper Tapper Bat is the way it digests food. It doesn't just turn it into energy. It also turns it into new mathematical formulas, theories that they can then choose to put to use or to store in the lingy dingies. Now, if they decide to put it to use, that formula will travel up to the lingy dingies, and from there, they will decide whether or not it goes to the Krangus or stays in the lingy dingies.
If I might add, raw mathematical data.
Here.
Raw mathematical data.
Raw form. Below that, we have the Changi Dangi. And the thing about the Changi Dangi is it's one of the most, it's probably the most essential parts of the Math Boy in terms of succession. For the Changi Dangi, it doesn't work like a normal sexual organ. The Changi Dangi is unique to the Math Boy, for it forms into the organ necessary for reproduction purposes to name, or to essentially spread the mathematical seed onto the successor. So when a Math Boy has decided that they want to, when they've decided on their successor, they will take the mathematical seed from the Changi Dangi and put it into the successor, whether it be male or female, non-binary, etc., etc. And this is the most important part. That seed, the mathematical seed, is the most important part, because if you do not have that mathematical seed and you try to surgically implant the lingy dingies, it will end your life almost instantly.
And if I could interrupt, gentlemen, I know there is some stigma surrounding some of these terms, and we were all at the symposium last Friday. I will keep it at that. The rest of the viewers aren't aware of what we know, but ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you, there were some connections to be made. Pardon me, doctor. Please continue.
Oh no, it's not a problem. So what's so important about that mathematical seed, though, is when the successor is named and it's inside the successor, the lingy dingies can then be transferred. If you do not have the lingy dingies in there, or if you do not have the mathematical seed in there, and you try to implant the lingy dingies, you will lose your life instantly, for the amount of raw and old ancient knowledge that are stored in those will be too much for the Krangus to handle, or correction, for a normal human being's Krangus to handle, and it will result in immediate termination of their life. So the Changi Dangi is the most important part when it comes to succeeding, or when it comes to the Math Boy choosing a successor.
To quote Dr. Doerr's latest book, the Math Boy state, upon activation, releases an immense amount of energy, and if you do not have the Changi Dangi, the Math Boy state will simply end your life. And then the cycle of rebirth of the Math Boy cannot continue. And they bring balance to the math world, so we absolutely need them.
It actually reminds me of a little bit of an odd, but I would also argue important historical fact. There has been 2 known kidnappings of a Math Boy, and both times did they try to implant the lingy dingies inside themselves, and the results were catastrophic. I'm sure you folks know of the town known as Chernobyl.
Of course, naturally.
That was the latest attempt, and it was disastrous. That was a result. And of course, the lingy dingies are still intact, for they are themselves a raw energy source. And only Math Boy, only the Math Boy themselves or the successor with the mathematical seed in them are able to walk through that raw energy of mathematical equations. Zoom in everywhere. they're the only ones that could have picked up the Lingy Dingies. If not, the Math Boy would have ceased to exist back in 1893. Sorry, it appears that my mouth's a little bit dry.
To bring up a story from the Bible in, I believe it was book Neon, Genesis, Evangelion. It said that.
Sorry to correct you, Doctor, but it's Gillian.
Neon Genesis Evangelion. I believe it describes the power of that release that comes from a Math Boy, and without these required systems in a body, the person will simply cease to be.
Here.
That's how it is.
Absolutely. Thank you for your input, Dr. Chad.
Thank you, Doctor.
Oh, do you have something more to add, Doctor?
Thank you. That's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
I appreciate your input, Dr. Chad. It was greatly appreciated. Something happened to your camera, Doctor? Oh, there you are, Dr. Chad.
A little bit of technical difficulties tonight, I see, Doctor.
Well, as you gentlemen know, it's been a little bit cold around here in the Midwest for about a month now. Today is record breaking, as we all know. So make sure you bundle up before you leave your domains tonight, please and thank you.
Oh, very well.
Did calculate extremely low temperature. So be sure to take care.
Here.
Thank you. And moving down from the Changi Dangi, we have the Mippity Clepetus. And the Mippity Clepetus is the most important bone structure that is different from a human to the Math Boy. And what the Mippity Clepetus is it's a secondary bone structure that allows the Math Boy to support their own weight, because with a crangus of what we can tell of an average circumference of 120 centimeters, that's going to take a heavy toll on their body. So without the Mippity Clepetus, their legs would have given out. So it's something the Math Boy formulated and made on their own to be able to support their own weight, so that they can go about and do what a Math Boy does best.
And let's not forget the weight of the Changi Dangi on the Math Boy.
Here.
An average Changi Dangi is about 15 to 18 inches long.
Here. We all remember the studies on those. We all remember the studies that were conducted on those.
I will say I remember that poor Korean boy with one of the previous Math Boys. He sadly lost his life.
Yep.
Lord rest his soul.
You're here. Lord rest his soul.
But no, the Mippity Clepetus is very essential to the Math Boy supporting their own weight to be able to walk around, unless they want to be Charles Xavier, if you know what I'm talking about. Unless you gentlemen have any questions on my books about the anatomy of the Math Boy, I do believe that this would conclude my my 2 cents
Deeper
into
analysis.
the.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And gentlemen, I must say it takes me back to undergrad days, where we would all sit around a campfire and joke about some of the studies that were conducted, and I must say it's eliciting some of those feelings inside me, and I'm glad that we were able to find that in this. And with that being said, we can move on to the next page.
Absolutely.
Dr. Dorr, Dr. Chad, before we get into the next part, is it alright with you gentlemen if I pour myself a little glass?
Oh, absolutely. Enjoying yourself some brandy tonight.
No, actually, it's my favorite it's my favorite craft. My apologies, from Ruby Cask Barrels. My favorite decanter, and it is called Angel's Envy, and it is just a smooth finish all along the board. It is a phenomenal whiskey. If you gentlemen are ever interested, I will have a glass ready for you should you ever visit.
Very good. I tip my glass to you, good sir.
Why, thank you. I'm gonna throw this back, gentlemen, if you would like to continue on.
Of course, and of course we're all on the big cover story in the magazine. And I'm sure this was very highly anticipated. I know I was highly anticipating it with our late Math Boy's departure, God rest his soul. Doctor, I don't know if you wanted to pay respects.
It's unfortunate. That's all I can
It is. Oh, absolutely. And then moving to the next page, we see the visual representation of the late math boy, God rest his soul. And we see it set up in sort of a panel by panel, side panel, almost as if it were a comic. And I think is befitting because we all knew that the late math boy, God rest his soul, was an avid comic reader before his tenure as math boy. And so top left panel, we see obviously the three of us. We have from left to right, we have Dr. Quipped, followed by Dr. Chad, followed by myself, Dr. Dorr. And then up top there in the Math Boy headquarter building is the recently departed Junnar. And of course, we have correspondence between us. So we are getting his attention in the first segment there, and then in the next segment, it moves into the assertion that Junnar is indeed the math boy, and the acceptance thereof by Junnar. Now, things take a little bit of a turn when, in the third frame, Junnar asserts that he was kidding the whole time and that he's leaving. Now, of course, as a side note, gentlemen, we all know that this is not true. We know that Junnar did serve his time honorably as math boy, God rest his soul. And it's beyond me as to why the authors of Math Boy Monthly, would have such a falsity in this segment. Does anyone want to chip in here? Maybe I have the wrong information.
I had spoken to.
Please go ahead, Dr. Chad.
My apologies. I had spoken to one of the lead writers over at Math Boy Monthly, and they said this was more of a joke than a truth. They essentially wanted to bring awareness of the former Math Boy's departure, God rest his soul. But do so in a brighter light rather than make things somber, because that's not what math is about. It's not about somberness. It's about fun and creativity and, you know, bright colors and an amazing future. That's what the Math Boy is all about.
Here.
I do apologize for my gentlemen, for I do understand that this is supposed to be a joke, but I can't help but feel a deep sorrow for our recently departed math boy, God rest his soul.
Absolutely.
Here, gentlemen, very interesting. And in the last, yeah, of course.
I actually did hear news that day, possibly. Now, I'm not saying this is confirmed 100%, but possibly a new math boy has been appointed already.
Really?
Yes.
Do you have
I
any...
cannot disclose those details here. However, as the confirmation is brought to light, I will be releasing a statement on it on my website, drpennis.com.
Thank you, Dr. Chad.
Thank you, Doctor. With all that being said, we have, of course, the last frame left in which Junnar has departed, and the three of us are indicating our remorse, our sorrow, and that is essentially the visual representation of the late math boy Junnar's departure.
Now,
God rest his soul.
Before we move on to the last frame, gentlemen, maybe we can take one brief moment of silence for our recently departed.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Here. So moving on to the next page here. And I'm looking at you here, Dr. Enos. 5 Math Boy fashion musts this season. I have no introduction. I want to hear your expertise on this. What do you make of it?
So, like I had said previously, the Math Boy is just this reincarnation of the most amazing human calculator, essentially, on the planet. This individual is legendary, mythic, even. And as math boys have come throughout the age, we see different styles set forth by these math boys. Whenever a new math boy is released, the outfit that they are in during their public release it always sells. Like, what did the math boy say? 563% more. It's always that number. So first we have the Louis Vuitton Avatar crew neck, which, like I said, I had a feeling this season was going to be about reincarnation, especially with the dear previous math boys departure. God rest his soul. We have the Louis Vuitton Avatar crew neck, and then we have the Giorgio Armani round build cap in beige. The thing about math boys in beige is they go hand in hand like peas and carrots. Math boys have always worn tan and beige. It's just almost a staple, a non-spoken treaty between clothing and the math boy. It's always been beige and tan, just always. We have the Prada multicolored paper wristband. Now, this particular math boy season is just all about the accessories, and nothing befits the accessories more than this multicolored wristband.
Here.
Then obviously we have the tan cargo Gucci pants. And again, the tan and beige, it's all about that. Math boys have been wearing it for centuries, for millennia even. And then we have the Tom Ford black sneakers on red soles. Now, I did have the pleasure of speaking to the math boy before he departed. God rest his soul. And he did mention that these are just very, very comfortable shoes, and that's why he wore them. Not even to make a fashion statement. That's just, just what he liked. Now I am very interested in seeing what the next fashion must for the math boy must be. However, that is a whole season away, and I won't waste time making conjecture.
Very good. Thanks so much for that. I think we're all looking forward to seeing the next math boy sporting some of these pieces of attire. And with that being said, we can move on to the next page. A bit of a somber moment with this article. I did a little bit of pre-reading the other day. What happens to old math boys? It's a question I'm sure we get a lot. It's a question that's asked a lot. And it's succinctly answered in this investigative opinion article by guest author Dr. James Tooper, lead astrophysicist at the Donna H. Gust Memorial Planetarium. And I know we all have done some work with Dr. Tooper in the past, and we appreciate him coming on. Yep, we appreciate him coming on, giving us a guest article. So he answers the question succinctly. We don't talk about what happens to all men.
We don't really talk.
We don't talk about it.
It's not necessary. We don't talk about it.
And Doctor,
Sometimes they will be brought into conversation, I assume, but typically it's brief. It's a brief conjecture of what we're trying to get our point across with, but we don't talk about.
We don't really talk about.
No, we don't talk about.
We don't talk about that.
And Dr. Tooper, very interestingly enough, knows this, and perhaps broke the golden rule with this article, which is why I love him so much. I mean, he's provocative.
He is making strides forward that people have not even thought possible. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, of course, the math boy knew it was possible. He's known all along.
Oh, here.
Absolutely. It's just math for the math boy. Regular day in the park.
Very good. And with that being said, we can move to the next page. And we all needed this. We all needed something like this. Now, I know, Dr. Quipped, you have some background in public opinion, in doing some in that kind of arena. So does this serve as a good public service announcement to the general public as to what to be on the look for when you're looking for what is not the math boy?
I do believe so. Yes. I have not been to stress it enough. There has been the amount of natural public speaking I do is just unbelievable. The audacity some people have to what they consider to be a math boy, and this is the most common one. I will never understand call me a narcissist, but I feel myself on a slightly higher plane existential knowledge above the average person, and I can't stress this enough.
Absolutely.
Crocs
Here, here.
are not math boys.
Here, here.
Can't stress it
Absolutely
enough.
not. They look like them, but they're not. They're not. They're simply not.
No, pardon me, gentlemen, but I do have a small story. The 2 months ago, I was at a public speech in Chicago, and one individual, I will not name him, but I will say they had some audacity. They asked me if the math boy could be a snake,
No.
and I was appalled that they would even ask me such.
Damn it!
I can't
is-
believe. Oh, I can't believe it. That is so. That is just
It is unbelievable, unbelievable.
unprofessional and churlish.
I can't.
We're-
Gentlemen,
it-
I would like to
understand.
keep.
I
I want to keep a
understand
little bit of
emotions.
composure, and
I understand.
I just.
Very, very emotional.
It must be so hard to be so dumb on a natural basis. It's just.
Absolutely.
And well, to
I know you-
the untrained eye, looking at this image, one might be fooled into thinking that this is indeed a math boy.
But it's simply not.
No.
Simply not. It may look like one, but it's not. And people just have to understand that.
Yep.
Fantastic.
The way that I could tell, and this is something I read from Dr. Well, in his latest book. The best way to tell is the lack of a Krangus and a Changeldangle.
Oh, indeed.
Although I do point those out in my latest book, if you also notice, if you look at the very last leg, you'll notice that it only has one arc sticking out of the back. Math boys
Absolutely.
always have two. With
Two.
uh,
It's common knowledge.
they always have two. With
That's
their
why it's so frustrating.
Mimiciclibituses, they always have
Absolutely.
two.
Absolutely. That's why it's so frustrating that people, for some reason, mistake this as the math boy. It's simply infuriating.
It's not.
If I may say though, doctors,
It's
albeit
Absolutely.
is very infuriating and frustrating, you can't help but feel sorry for the lesser trained mind.
Here.
Yes.
I feel
Those
nothing but,
uninitiated to the ways of the math boy, unlike
some-
us, math boy studiers.
I sometimes feel envy to be so ignorant of bliss.
Here. Very interesting, gentlemen. And with that being said, we can move on to the next page. And we always love to see these editions, right? This month's notable prior math boys. Dr. Ingy Kittleman V, Esquire. Now, I have had the opportunity to study up on some of his work. However, being that we've all read your latest installment, Dr. Quipped, we know that you have a thing or two to say. So could you read us the article, give us your,
I do have a good understanding of this, but personally, if I may say so, although I'm the last one to have published a book on this, if I may defer to Dr. Chad, I read his third installment of the Kittleman series, and I think that he would have a little bit more knowledge than what I possess at this time
Okay.
to explain this. Dr. Chad, if I may defer to you, could you please lead us in this?
naturally.
Absolutely. So first, I would like to point out the photo that I used for the example. I would like to say that Claggle Waggle on the photo of Dr. Ingy Kittleman V, Esquire. That Claggle Waggle is simply made for smelling and absorbing math. It's
Without a doubt.
yes, absolutely. It's
Here.
It's the straight and narrow math boy path. This is a good example of what a math boy should be and is. Now let me read the article, gentlemen. Born in Tibertober, PA, 1801, Kittleman abandoned his successful career as a penal attorney and led fellows at the Rangus Institute. He was the second math boy appointed by the first, the Honorable Dr. Yuck Eviltimer, for his research in applied math boy topology. Never intending to serve as a math boy himself, Kittleman was naturally honored to assume the role and did so for over 70 years before appointing his successor, the Honorable Dr. Pariki Clockenden. The first photo on the right is Kittleman at his 50-year Math Boy service anniversary, escorted by the Honorable General Cap Clippity circa 1872. And down on the bottom right, we can see Kittleman and President Andrew Johnson discussing whatever they were discussing, probably math. What presidents and math boys discuss, am I right? 1866.
If I may interject, that bottom photo of Kittleman and President Andrew Johnson circa 1866, my father was actually there. He was there at the time of their conversation, and
Amazing.
Andrew Johnson was he was enlightened by Kittleman then. His cranius developed by approximately 5 centimeters in circumference. Just talking to the math boy had that effect on Andrew Johnson, and
Absolutely.
he went on to be a phenomenal president after that conversation.
Now, the thing is that while Johnson has mostly been historically forgotten, everyone will always remember Dr. Ingy Kittleman. It's just a simple fact. Revolutionary, may I say. Revolutionary.
And
Most indubitably agree, Dr. Chad.
I would as well, and I would point out that his work in applied math boy topology was cutting edge for the time, and some of the formulas are still being used today.
I think the reason he was such a successful math boy topology
Topologist?
topologist is because, unbeknownst to him, someday he would acquire the math boy title. And that's why I think he was such an astute mathematician way before he even became the math boy.
Here, here.
So, if you don't actually know, I recently discovered this in my studies about Dr. Ingy Kittleman V. He did not know that he was actually imprinted by the math boy prior to him with the Jengy Dingy. He did not know that he was imprinted with the
Honorable
mathematical
Dr.
seed.
Absolutely.
Yes, he did not know that he was made the successor. Inevitably, he ended up passing it on, but the reason why he didn't intend to be was because he felt like that he wanted to have a different choice, but after realizing the amount of knowledge that he could possess, he inevitably had to. It was unmistakable, and post surgery of the lingy dingies, that man was changed forevermore. The Dr. Ingy Kittleman V.
And might I say, 70 years, longest serving
Here, here.
in history.
Here, here.
Amazing individual, fantastic.
Here, here. All right, fantastic. And with that being said, we can move on to the final page,
Absolutely,
where we have, it's a continuation of notable prior math boy. We have some honorable mentions. Of course, we all remember Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and his work in applied math boy Dianetics.
That man revolutionized the math boy. His speeches it changed the world.
And
Here, here.
using the math boy knowledge he had, he also created a change in America that was completely necessary. So I just want to
Undoubtedly.
congratulate his work and his math proficiency.
His mathematics and the work that he did socially, insurmountably important, and sent the United States in particular in a very good direction.
Don't get
Absolutely.
me wrong, the math boys have done wonderful services to this world, but Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and his time being math boy, our country was set on a straight path, and he straightened it. He set us going strong.
Typically, when we discuss math boy, it's about their math boys. Historically, it's about their achievements in math alone. This man, however, achieved things outside of math as well, and he's just such an inspiration to all math boys and all people everywhere.
Here, here.
If we may move
Undoubtedly.
on to Dr. Albert Einstein.
Of course. Who could forget him? And frankly, I'm surprised he did not. Frankly, I'm surprised that he did not earn the title of Math Boy of the Month. Because when was the last time? Dr. Chad, I think you wrote the article
Oh, that was actually me. Sorry. Dr. Chad worked with me on that article, but
Ah.
it was inevitable. It was me. I apologize for the misconception. I wanted to give him the credit for that article, but him and I, it was a bit of a secret. Him and I wrote it together.
Mostly him.
Albert Einstein, though, although he was not a math boy, in all of human history, dating back to before the birth of the first one to our current day and age, that man is the closest thing to a math boy that an average human could ever attain. He he was a very smart individual. He could not top the math boy. They actually had a little contest about formulating mathematical equations, and Albert Einstein lost, but the math boy later went on record, stating that Albert Einstein gave him a run for his money.
Indeed.
And this is why we consider him an honorary math boy, and why he's considered one of the greats, even though he's not a math boy himself.
He's one of the
And why he's up here in honorable mentions.
He's actually the most well-known man across the entire world.
Here, here.
Very huge inspiration to those striving for greatness.
Now, if I may, gentlemen, Madam Curie. Listen, when people talk
Here, here.
about math boy, there is this misunderstanding that the math boy can only be a boy. This is simply not true. The math boy can be any gender, any background, anything, any religion, whatever. Yeah. Now, Madame Curie was just an absolutely fantastic math boy. So, anyways, Isaac Newton, he was not
Not a math boy.
He was a
false
prophet.
False prophet, and we do not talk about Isaac Newton.
Actually, can we get an editorial team in here? Why did they feel the need
Why is
to
he
add
even
him?
on here? Why is he even on here?
Well, it's like I was mentioning before with the slight joke that was inserted in Junnar's departure in the comic reel. I have the same questions that you gentlemen do.
Absolutely. Because we just don't talk about we don't talk about Isaac.
It is unbelievable.
We don't talk about that.
It is unbelievable that with the new theory of apples being the new math, of that man is what he tried to do.
The way he mistreated that apple, I don't even want it.
Just unbelievable. It's unacceptable. Honestly, I can't tolerate it.
Get this man out of my room!
We
Gentlemen,
can move on. Please. I'm getting so upset.
gentlemen, of course,
You're
that
right, gentlemen.
and that concludes the magazine. And I'd like to thank my panel, my guests, Dr. Quipped and Dr. Shad. Thank you so much for being on. Thanks so much for discussing it. What we do here is important. We are going to train the next generation to have awareness for the math boy and to respect him or her in whatever his or her endeavor may be. With that being said, this is Dr. Dorr signing off. Thanks, gentlemen.